What up, all my fight fans? So, I have a question for you guys. How many fight nights do you guys remember missing? Me personally, back in the day, I don't remember missing a whole lot of them. Here's another question. How many fight nights did you literally request time off of work or save that specific date to say, hey, I am not doing anything that night. I am going to watch that. I remember a lot of them. When Cain Velasquez versus Junior Dos Santos, very fun fight night. When you had Nate Diaz versus Michael Johnson, very fun fight night. You know, when you even had TJ Dillashaw versus Henry Cejudo, yeah, the fight didn't end up being that big, but, you know, ended up being ending soon. Or TJ Dillashaw versus Dominic Cruz. You know, I remember quite a few fight nights that just like, whoa, I can't believe this is not even on a pay-per-view. That I remember those great fight nights that we've had. And it was fun because not only did they have a great main event, they had a great co-main event, and they had another great co-main event. Sometimes these fight nights would have had 3 or 4 great fights on there. You're just like, damn, this is like pay-per-view, but they're giving it to us for free. So the reason why I'm asking this, how satisfied and how happy are you guys with the current fight nights? Me personally, I'm not. I am not. I'm seeing some of these fight nights, and it's just very depressing. And here's the problem also. How happy are you even with the pay-per-views? The fights that you actually have to pay for? Me, again, I'm not. No disrespect to any of these guys, but when back in the day we were paying like $50, all right, you know, we're not going to get a big old, you know, laundry list of great fights on the card. Sure, you might get 2, if we're lucky, 3. Okay, no problem. But there, you know, it's $50, maybe a little less, maybe a little more at the time. But now we're looking at a price range of $80. $80 for fights that back in the day we used to get fight nights that were better than the pay-per-views. That says a lot. You know, no disrespect to Aljamain Sterling versus Henry Cejudo. That's a great fight. Then you had Bilal Muhammad versus Gilbert Burns. Another fun fight. But was it worth $80? And then you had a few other fights on there that, let's be honest, do we even remember them? We remember some of them. If you're a hardcore fan, deep hardcore fan, you know, I didn't even say hardcore. I'm going to say if you're an extreme fan. Because I'm a hardcore fan. I remember stuff from back in the day, from the early 90s. And I remember things from when I really got into it in the early 2000s. And I remember now. So I'm a very deep, extreme fan, and I don't even remember some of these guys who fought. And it's unfortunate because, you know, we look at the fights and we're like, hey, do I really want to see this? Do I really want to pay for this? Could I even afford to pay for this? Much less, like, do I want to risk $80 to see 2, maybe 3 fights that are okay? And that's what I'm saying. Now we got fight nights that were like, wait a minute, what? These sounds like prelims of the prelims on some of the pay-per-views. Like, wait, no disrespect to any of these guys. No disrespect to any of these girls. You know, no disrespect to any of the women, the men, and all them that are fighting on these fight nights. No disrespect. But it just doesn't feel like, I'm like, do I really want to order pizza? Do I really want to pop the popcorn, get some soda, and like sit down and watch this? Or am I going to be like, hey, am I really going to miss anything? You know, it's like, it's hit and miss. And at the end of the day, it's like, this is my money. This is my money that I'm paying for, especially pay-per-views. Like I just mentioned and talked about a video, or excuse me, in one of the videos I just recently did, I talked about the International Fight Week. That is worth the money, for sure, 100%. It still didn't scream International Fight Week card, but still very much worth the money. We look at some of the other fights, like we even got the June 10th fight, the UFC 289. You got Amanda Nunes versus, excuse me, I'm drawing a blank on her name. You got Amanda Nunes defending her title, and then you got Charles Oliveira versus Benil Dariush. The rest of the card, I'm sure I can bring up the list, but I don't necessarily remember. That doesn't scream $80. That doesn't scream, hey, I'm going to fork out almost $100 to pay for this. It's just, it's hard. It's really hard. It's really tough because, you know, of course, you can get your friends together and you all can chip in and be like, all right, cool, we can do that. But at the end of the day, does that even scream fight party? You know, does this scream like, hell yeah, fight party? I remember fight parties when we used to have De La Hoya versus Mayweather, or when you had Cain Velasquez versus Junior Dos Santos part 2 or part 3, or when you had Brock Lesnar versus Overeem, or Cain Velasquez versus Brock Lesnar, or even Conor McGregor versus Diaz, Conor McGregor versus Eddie Alvarez. You know, even Amanda Nunes when she went against Valentina. When you had Amanda Nunes when she went against Cyborg. You know, these scream fight night parties. Some of these cards, it's just like, who's gonna really want to chip in to see this? And a lot of people are gonna be like, hey, well, I don't necessarily know them all that much. No, again, no disrespect, but it just doesn't feel like the way it used to feel. I'm sure you guys can relate. I'm sure you guys remember watching ESPN. I'm sure you guys remember going through, you know, different towns and seeing billboards, and then you see commercials and previews on YouTube or in different TV channels that you were watching about the fight that's coming up, and you felt that energy. You felt that, like, oh my God, there's a big fight coming up. I can't wait. You go on ESPN, you look at MMA, you look at boxing, and you see all these other outlets talking about it. It's so much different now, and it's so much going under the radar. It almost feels like, oh yeah, we got this fight coming up. By the way, it's happening in about a week. Like, what? Like, where's the energy? Where's the like the big old press conferences that I remember seeing, and then like all the build-ups that we remember seeing? It just feels like it's all compact to like 1 week, and it's just like, I'm not motivated, I'm not determined, I'm not excited like I used to be. I used to be very excited when fights come up. I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait for this fight. You know, especially when they announced it. Like when they announced International Fight Week, they announced it just recently, so you get pumped and you're like, I gotta make sure I request that day off. I gotta make sure I'm not doing anything so I can be there and not miss it. Now you're like, if I miss it, did I really miss anything? Sure, I might miss an exciting fight here and there, but am I missing a star born? Am I missing a life-changing fight that I could have been like, oh my God? You know, am I missing like some kind of storyline that if I miss this, it's like, imagine watching a TV show. You know, that's the way we always used to grow up with it. Like if you see these guys fight with each other, and you see all of a sudden they're calling out a different person, and that person enters the cage, and there's some drama that pops off. It's like a TV show. You don't want to miss it. Instead of it just being a fight, you know, that's the entertainment part. Like now they're just basically watching just fights, which is good, don't get me wrong, but we also miss the entertaining part. We miss that part where we're like, you know, there's some kind of drama, there's some kind of, you know, things that are actually going to happen. There's kind of backstage, or even in the scuffle. I know it sounds very WWE, but at the end of the day, we kind of love that. You know, we loved when we saw Rashad Evans and Rampage go like, you know, I'm going to get my belt back. I want my belt back. You know, I'm coming for that. You know, they talk shit to each other. And then we remember, we had that, what, Sean O'Malley versus Aljamain Sterling. That was fun. We missed those days. And then, or like when they called out, they made a famous call out. Like when Nate Diaz, he beat Michael Johnson and he called out Conor McGregor. It's like, Conor McGregor, you're taking everything I worked for. I want your spot and this is that. You know, not to 100% unquoted or whatnot. So yeah, there was all these fun things. Or when Conor McGregor beat Dennis Seaver and he jumped over the cage and went after Jose Aldo. That's something that you don't want to miss. You're like, oh my God, that's so fun. And it just made you that much more excited and much more pumped to see these fights. And we don't get that no more. Guys, name 3 fights that you're extremely pumped to see in the UFC. It's hard. It really is hard. Because some of these fights are not even coming together. Some of these fights are not even being made. Some of these fights are no longer even being talked about. You know, it just sucks. It just really, really sucks because there are so many fights that we could have had. But then, of course, there's always this contract disputation. There's, of course, like I said, contracts. Then there's all these fights that don't want to be made. There's fighters that don't want to. They want to get paid, and then it's like not the right time, right place. And it's just so much, you know, going on that at the end of the day, it's like we as fans are the ones that lose. We are the ones that lose, and it's just like, no, we're tired of losing. We want to see these fights. We want to get excited. We want to get pumped. We want to get motivated. You know, we want these things to happen, but we're just not being able to. Now it's just like we're giving some, like, here you go, enjoy. Here you go, enjoy. Here you go, enjoy. It's like, it's not that big deal. I remember listening to Morning Combat, and they were even talking about how, you know, remember back in the day when Conor McGregor went against Jose Aldo, and they did this whole media tour, and it was like, oh my God, it just got you so pumped. There's nothing really there anymore that's getting you pumped, and that's what I'm trying to say. All these fight cards that are basically like almost prelims You know when you have a pay-per-view, you have the main card, then you have the prelims, and then you have like the literally prelims. And that's what some of these fight cards feel like. They feel like the prelims, where some of these cards should be on a pay-per-view match. You put some of these fight cards on a pay-per-view with other great pay-per-view stars and such like that, then it just becomes that much more worth it of buying. Or you put all these fight cards together instead of little by little. Okay, you fight this person on this day, you're gonna fight this person on this day, and we're just gonna, that's how we're gonna make our list. We're gonna go like 1 week this guy and this girl, or and such and such and such. We're not gonna get it all together. We're not gonna all like you put them all together. When you put a good fight card and another, or like a decent fight card and a decent fight card, you put those fights together, you make one really good fight card. Instead of it being like almost watered down, like, oh, you got one okay main event and maybe a decent co-main event where you can have like multiple good main card fights. Now I get why they're doing that, because at the end of the day, I do believe they have their deal with ESPN and they are supposed to match their deal. Like they're supposed to have a certain amount of fights throughout the year. But unfortunately, that us as fans, we lose because again, we're not getting great blockbusters or great fights for the fight cards during the week, or just without pay-per-view. Of course, not in pay-per-view, but then during pay-per-view, because they're spread out so thin. Now we're getting decent fight cards that we're gonna pay for. We're getting decent fight nights. We're getting decent fight cards in the pay-per-view. Now you get a nice co-main event and a decent main event. But instead of you getting like a really stacked card like we used to get back in the day, those were some really fun times. So that's my question to you guys. Like, what do you think of the way the UFC is going? What do you think of the fight cards that's been going down? What do you think of the pay-per-views? What do you think of the pricing? Let me know of all those things that you have going on, guys. Let me know all those things that you're thinking. Let me know all those things that you feel regarding the UFC and the fight cards. Because me personally, I haven't been the most happiness. I have not. So let me know in the comments, guys. Like, subscribe, hit that notification button, and I'll see you guys in the next video.